in this market in that process of like cutting the fish oil in half and putting fillers in there. Or I feel like I'm the more I dig into some of the food industry stuff, whether it's like honey, I don't know, just you hear about these processes where they're cutting it. It's almost like it's like a drug trade almost. It's like they're cutting it, adding corn syrup or something like that to extend the life of whatever supply they have. Is that a problem in this industry?
Not necessarily so much in fish oil. A lot of the manufacturers of fish oil are, coming from Europe or they're U.S. So they're all exacting standards. They're using GOED, which is kind of the international body that oversees all of that. So a lot of your specs, a lot of the testing that's done on that really becomes indicative of what you're going to get in that finished product. There is some stuff from China. And unfortunately that's the issue is that we'll be like that. It'll say it's, an 80% concentrate, and then you find out it's 40, and you look at it and there's corn oil. Yeah. Something in there. Luckily in the fish oil industry, it is pretty regulated, so you don't see it as much as you would in kind of the supplement industry, but it still exists. And that's why I always say is like go with a good reputable brand, and you're going to be solid.
Is there really much of a difference getting it in a liquid form versus a gel cap type form?
I always look at, how often are you taking it and, kind of what's its exposure. A lot of people will, once you open a liquid bottle, it's going to start to oxidize. Mm-hmm. So if you're kind of letting that sit around for 30 days, it's going to kind of go rancid. That is the issue with it. Whereas if you go with like soft gels, you're going to have just better long-term stability on that. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, I think if you're taking your fish oil daily and you've got a 30-day supply, the reality of it going rancid in 30 days is pretty low. But if you're one of those people, it's like, I might take it once a week. After 3 to 4 months, you're going to open that thing up and be like, whoa.
Yeah. Actually, just this morning or maybe yesterday, I was saying to Andrew's wife, because she's pregnant right now, so she's wanting to take some amount of DHA, and she had a bottle on the counter, and she was asking if she should put it in the fridge or leave it on the counter. And I was saying, well, they're highly unsaturated, heat, light, moisture. That's why the bottle's like, basically black. It's trying to like block out light. The colder you keep it, the less likely it is to go bad, just because it's at a colder temperature. But by the time it gets to your house, like I have no idea how long that's been like sitting in a warehouse that's 100 degrees or what have you. Like, how do you know if it's not rancid like before it gets to you? Like, is it a long process, but going from like fish to your house, like buying it through a retailer?
Yeah, it can be. It's not like that fish gets pressed and then it's air freighted to Germany and
right to your house.
Yeah, right.
Drop shipping from Chile.
Exactly. There's a guy that's putting it in a bottle and just shipping it right off to you. No, and that unfortunately with kind of the mart of commerce right now being Amazon or e-com, you don't know. I mean, if you're living in Phoenix in August and all of a sudden you're ordering fish oil online, how long has that fish oil been sitting on a UPS truck?
I was just in Phoenix, and if you have fish oil sitting just on your front doorstep for 10 minutes, it's probably bad.
Yeah.
It's 1,000,000 degrees there, and it's only May.
Yeah.
The fish, there's no way it makes it an afternoon.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Like,
it's terrible.
I mean, you literally open the bottle and be like, whoa, okay.
Bad.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that my recommendation too on stuff like that is you don't know, right? So err on the side of caution. If you live in Phoenix in May, June, July, August, go to a retailer and buy it. Mm-hmm. Chances are they're going to have a better supply chain to get it to that shop, or just go in January to the store and stock up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a process there that if it's not done properly, one of the things that we do is we always flush it with argon gas. So we're protecting it. There's a lot of there's a lot of protectants that typically go in fish oil, and that could be vitamin E, that could be some kind of mixed tocopherol to keep it fresh, but you can't beat Mother Nature or go head to head with Mother Nature.
You're flushing it with argon gas, so there's no oxygen.
Correct. And then there are some companies like the Chinese companies or some of the cheaper companies that will use nitrogen, but you get this barrel of fish oil, and the second you take the top off, the nitrogen goes poof, whereas argon's heavier, so it just kind of keeps this nice blanket over the top of it to keep it fresh. Mm-hmm. So those are all things that you can look at, but it's always going to come down to price, right? When you look at fish oil, the more expensive chances are going to be the ones that use those supply chain improvements to make sure you get a better product.
Right. I mean, speaking of heat, like I know with other types of industrial seed oils and whatnot for corn oil or soybean oil or vegetable oil or what have you, like as a part of the process of distilling those into like a light yellow clear liquid that looks good on the shelf, they have to bleach and deodorize and put solvents in it and all these different things. And as a part of those processes, oftentimes they're subjected to relatively high temperatures, 400, 500, 600 degrees. Like with fish oil being very highly unsaturated, they wouldn't tolerate high heats very well. So when they're distilling the oil, like, is it just like a cold press?
Yeah,
Typically?
it's typically the best ways to do that are that supercritical, that superfluid. So you're just using CO2. It's a cold process to extract it. So you're not doing exactly that. It's subjecting it to those high heats, which are going to break it down and obviously create a lot of those issues that you just spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier how they separate into 3 pieces, like EPAs on one, DHAs on the other, and you can play with some of the amounts for like prenatal.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the other? What are the processes that they're doing to separate that? You had some really cool words that I was like, I have to come back and ask them that. But why is the prenatal one more DHA versus EPA? And what are the other reasons in which you would fluctuate with those amounts?
Again, it really just depends. So there's 22,000 clinical studies on the benefits of omegas, and the problem is that you've got DPA, you've got DHA, you've got EPA, you've got all of these different parts, constituent parts of omegas. So that clinical research is varying in what the outcomes are based off of the specific product. Mm-hmm. So what we do know is DHA is great for prenatal because of brain and eye health. So a lot of your brain omegas, a lot of your eye omegas, all of that development is based off of DHA. As we get older, and pain, inflammation resolution becomes more of an issue. That's where we see EPA having more of a profound impact. So a lot of it is just, well, what are we really looking at? What are you as a consumer wanting to do with your specific omegas, and then look at the type of products that are available in the market to address those needs.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is there really a need to supplement with the plant version of omega-3s, like alpha-linolenic acid and all the intermediates that are on the way to EPA and DHA?
Absolutely, and we look at the biology of that, and most people, like on the best side, are converting ALA to at about 10%. So you get a lot of these vegans like, oh no, I get my omegas from chia and flax. Well, the problem is that if you're only converting at best 10% of those, you're probably going to end up being deficient based off of the WHO, the FDA, all of these universal standards for what our daily omega intake is. So unfortunately, as much as I love my vegan friends, I have to tell them, it's like,
those damn hippies.
Yeah, it ain't getting it done, guys. It's like, I'm sorry, and luckily there's some algae sources that are coming out that we're able to concentrate up. But if you're just getting your DHA or omegas from flax or chia, it ain't happening.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a big push lately. I mean, since the paleo thing kind of showed up, it wasn't just in the CrossFit community, but when the paleo thing happened and there was like Paleo Solution comes out, all of a sudden there was a ton of attention on this. There was just a massive rise in understanding like the benefits of omega-3s. And where is that conversation gone in the last 5-6 years? And I guess keeping up with the demand has got to be a challenging thing.
It is, and let's talk a little bit about the diet piece of that, because that's a great question. And to do that, I think let's go back in time 200 years, where if we look at the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, the average ratio at that time was about 1-to-1. And we know that kind of keeps inflammation resolution in check. So when we fast forward 100 years, early 1900s, and it kind of spikes to 4-to-1. People are starting to enjoy more red meats. We're starting to see more dairy come into the diet, and so that omega-6, omega-3 ratio kind of starts to get a little out of whack. Right now, we guess it at around 25-to-1. That's just hyper pro-inflammatory, right? And so, basically, so the emergence of some of these paleo diets are great, but oftentimes they're misunderstood. And I always tell this story of my best friend of like 30 years who, this is about 12 years ago, he decides he wants to get married. And at the time, he's a little out of shape, college athlete, but kind of let himself go, started enjoying too many Coors Lights every day after work. So pops the question, says, hey, I need to get in shape for the wedding. I'm like, all right, I'll come by tomorrow morning. We'll go to the gym, get a plan in place. Walk in his house. He's sitting on the floor in front of his coffee table with ESPN on, eating a plate of bacon and cheese. And I'm looking, I'm like, we're supposed to be at the gym in 5 minutes. He's like, dude, it's on the Atkins diet. I'm like, oh God. But this is the problem, right? Is we get all of these diet fads, and they're fundamentally misunderstood.
Yeah.
So paleo, just some of these keto kind of diets is like, if we don't follow them properly, or if our bodies just aren't set up to fall, to really process those kind of diets, then we start to see that omega-6, omega-3 ratio go completely out of whack.
Just as context, can you walk through the differences kind of between omega-3, omega-6, and the actual ratio that we see in nature versus what happens when you see a ton of corn-fed cow meat that what you're usually buying in the store is so far from what is supposed to be part of nature, and what are the problems that can come along with that imbalance?
Well, and that's a great question. So not only do you have all of the processed meat, the corn-fed, all of the stuff that's really going to contribute to that, pro-inflammatory omega-6, and omega-6s are great, right?
Yeah.
All of these omegas, the 6s, the 9s, all of those, they all have their unique component within our body, but when we start eating too much corn, when we start eating too much beef, when we start eating too much dairy, that's when we start to see those. And part of it is just that, as human beings, we've always lived close to the water. We're by and large, I think, kind of predetermined to eat fish, to eat, kind of this more Mediterranean diet. And then, everyone comes here to the United States, and we've got all these landlocked states, and everyone's eating cow and dairy. And so we start to see these, these patterns that evolve, and a lot of it's the breads, it's the processed grains and all of that. So I think just really looking at what it means to take a step back from our diet. If you're going to eat beef, don't do it every single day.
Yeah.
I know everyone's into their keto diets and whatnot, or paleo, but